Well, now we're recording. Great. Welcome everybody to our first post Dublin MOQ interim. You are being recorded. This, as always, is the note well, which talks about the intellectual property and code of conduct implications of you being here. If you're not familiar with it, please direct your browser to it and take a look at all these provisions. As always, we're going to use the Zulip for technical chat. If there's meeting maintenance things, you can use the Google Meet chat. In fact, the first one is already on there. There's a pinned message in the Google Meet chat that provides a link to sign the blue sheets, which you should do. Please don't do technical stuff in the Google Meet chat. One, because not everyone can view it, and number two, it's not archived. And of course, we're using Google Meet as always for queuing, show of hands, and audio, video, and slides, which you probably already figured out. All right, this is today's agenda. We're in the introduction right now, and the chairs have identified two issues we want to talk about, and some of them are actually PRs. One is subscribe done, which I think is close to landing. We just need to sort of have a judgment from the group about how to proceed. And then extensible object editor has seen a lot of interest recently, so we'll talk about that some. We need a scribe. I think we all know the drill at this. I'll just, while we wait for someone to step up, I'll just repeat what I've said the last several meetings, which is that it's better if you just take brief notes about what we discussed and what we decided, rather than verbatim transcription of the meeting. There's a YouTube recording. There's a recording that we placed on YouTube, so we don't need a transcription. And in fact, that makes it harder for people to quickly get a grasp of what happened in meetings they missed. So please do not transcribe the meeting. Just write down the key things.
Martin, do you need to admit people to this meeting? Because there are only 6 people and 3 of us are chairs.
I did, but I turned that off. So you were the last person I admitted, and everyone since then.
There's no one waiting. Anyway.
There's no one waiting.
Well, when it comes to the scribe, the 3 people who are on time to the meeting, your penalty is one of you has to be the scribe.
Okay, I'll attempt to do it. Where do I write? Where do I try to do that?
So that link in the Google Meet chat is where the blue sheets are.
Yes.
You just kind of go down right below that list of people, and
Fabulous. Minutes. And I can start typing, you say?
Yes. Just go on in there, and as soon as we do something or decide something, write it down.
In the tool, there's like a
pencil.
There's like a pencil, an eyeball, or both, or something up at the top. So yeah.
When I hit pencil, the view changes radically to black. Okay, I'm good. Awesome.
Thank you, Giovanni.
You're welcome.
If somebody could, Giovanni's obviously leading this.
For sure.
If somebody could back up Giovanni, that would be much appreciated. All right, enough of that. Okay, we're just going to jump right into so I'm going to present the scribe done slides because I was the one that did the first PR on this subject. And obviously I'm doing this as an individual. All right. Okay. So what is the purpose of subscribe done? I feel pretty strongly that this is the purpose of subscribe done. That the publisher, not necessarily the original publisher, but the publisher says that I'm deleting my subscription state. It is okay for you to delete your subscription state. And if you send me more stuff for the subscribe ID, I'm not going to know what to do with it. My goal in this presentation is to, if you're not already convinced of this, is to convince you that is in fact the correct purpose. And 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 that is in fact the correct purpose. There are some unfortunately, details of this are a little bit difficult. Yes, Alan.
Just wanted to add one more purpose, which is to it's tied to this purpose, but also to convey potentially some kind of error.
Okay, fair enough. Right. So my main purpose today is to convince you this is the actual correct purpose of scribe done. The document is the status quo is terrible. The document is very unclear on what this is done, what you do with this. There are unfortunately some real complexities in like doing that effectively, and I'll get into those. And there are like 4 different solutions to doing that. And I honestly don't care which of those 4 solutions we pick. But I think the second outcome of this presentation, hopefully, is that we get a clear signal from the group on how they want to proceed. Okay, so to understand why we need a subscribe done, I think it's instructive to see why we do not need a fetch done. Fetch responses are done obviously on a single stream. So when that stream is fin or reset, the fetch is done, right? We don't need any further signal there. It's very easy. Subscribed is different. Here's a basic example. Let's say group 2 is in a subscribe for whatever reason, and we've got the 3 subgroups there. There are 3 subgroups in the group. All those streams have been finned. You'll see that object 5 and 7 are missing. So as a receiver, like, am I done? Are those objects just missing? Was there another subgroup that is like going to appear in like a stream 4 that I'm gonna have to deal with, or is there a stream 4 but it's already been the sender decided to like never send it because it was out of time, etc. There's no way to know if we're done. Now, like an alternate way to communicate this would be just to require this receiver to always send an unsubscribe. That seems bad to me for a lot of. Anyway, this has come up as a counter proposal, sort of informally. I think that's like clearly bad. One, to like for the sender to rely on the receiver to like clear its state, and like furthermore, a track ends, which may or may not include a like end of track object, and like the client's just gonna like sit around for a while and then just decide, oh, I guess the subscribe is done, and so I'm gonna send an unsubscribe. Would anyone like to is anyone not convinced, confused, or like just disagree with this slide of the need to have a subscribe done that communicates what I've just communicated, what I think it should communicate? I want us to be absolutely locked on this purpose before we move forward. All right, no one is raising their hands, so I'm going to assume that that we all agree on this point, at least everyone that's in the call. Okay, so the bad news is it's kind of hard to communicate synchronously. Here's like so the sender might have a reasonable sequence of messages up at the top row there. So maybe group 0 is the end of the subscribe. So I send group 0, subgroup 0, object 0, which is a single object stream, and I fin that. Then I send another object from another stream. Then I decide to reset that stream because we're out of time. And now that I've done that, I've closed both of the streams for the last group. All the other, it's group 0, so there are other groups, and so I can send a subscribe done. Well, the way things work is it's very likely that it's going to show in the order it's going to arrive. Not very likely. It's quite like it's somewhat likely that the message will arrive in the order shown at the bottom. The reset stream is a quick control frame, so it's going to be it should be prioritized over just everything else, and it should arrive first. Then the subscribe done is the enable QT control message, which should arrive second, and then lastly the data will arrive. And so the subscribe done is not a signal where the receiver can just immediately blow everything away, because then it'll lose those objects that arrive late. And of course, even that statement is not deterministic. Like if the reset stream frame is lost in a packet, it can be retransmitted and arrive after everything else. Priority implementations quality is kind of uneven, so you could very well not have things turn out this way. If there's like nothing on the wire, like things might actually just go out on the wire immediately. If there's nothing in the buffer, like things might go out on the wire immediately as soon as they're generated. So you might actually, in fact, receive those 4 messages in the order that the sender intended. It's kind of the Wild West because of the fundamental unreliability of a transport. so this is difficult to reason about. Okay, so both I and several other people that have been involved in this problem have thought of 4 possible ways to resolve this ambiguity. I don't particularly care which way we do this, but here's what the options are. So number 1 is we just run a timer, right? So the receiver gets the subscribe done, and like just holds a timer just in case like stuff comes in late. Timers kind of are annoying to implement. That said, like we may like most real implementations of clients and servers will probably have to run a timer anyway for idleness and so on. We can have a good, nice long bike shed about how long that timer should run. I think in my initial version of this PR, I had a 2-second timer, and some people thought it was clearly like too much, and some people thought it was clearly too little. Mileage may vary. The second option is, thanks to Victor, he points out that the Web Transport API has a signal when a stream has entered data received, which means not only have you sent the fin, but the fin has been acked. So all the reliable streams, the sender has a signal when all the reliable streams have been received by the QUIC implementation on the other end. In principle, it doesn't really help you with reset streams, but like, and I guess a receiver could like run a timer and hang around for streams that have been reset, but like almost by definition, reset streams are beyond the delivery timeout. So like just drop them on the floor. You don't really need them anymore. There are a couple of, there's a downside and there's a complication here. The downside is the publishers to keep state for a little bit longer. You have to wait for approximately an RTT, possibly more if there are packet losses, for those FINACs to arrive. And in general, we want to minimize publisher state. The other complication is that FINAC is obviously a QUIC level thing. So as a receiver, you have to be a little bit careful that you don't have unconsumed data. If you get a subscribe done, you have to be careful you don't have unconsumed data down in your QUIC receive buffers that you're just not consuming for some reason. So some people have raised this objection. I don't think it's a big deal. But anyway, this is what PR 609 currently proposes. And I'm not wedded to that. It just seemed like the most reasonable thing to me. All right, third option, which Alan has encoded in PR 628, is to have the subscribe done include a field that counts the number of streams in the subscription. So, hey, like the subscription is done. I'm not opening any more streams. I use a total 28 streams to deliver everything. You can tear down your state once you've seen 28 streams. This is that's completely logical. The one thing it requires is for reset stream at to be supported, because when you send a stream that gets reset, you need to have the track alias delivered to correctly account for that stream to belong to a particular subscription. Not a big deal, it's straightforward, pretty conceptually, but it does levy a new requirement. We have reset stream as an optional thing in MOQT right now, and it would become a mandatory thing in MOQT, which looks like it'll be mandatory for transport, so it's not a huge loss. But if you're running over raw QUIC, this is a new thing that becomes required. The fourth option, which is probably the least baked, is that you could just include the highest stream ID, the highest QUIC stream ID or HB2 stream ID that you used in the connection. And then once, as a receiver, you've seen all the unidirectional sender-originated stream IDs up to that stream ID, then you know it's safe to clear. Now that does require a new WebTrans API to obtain the QUIC stream ID, which has been a somewhat, as I understand, a very contentious issue to expose that kind of stuff in web transport. And there might be some other complications I haven't thought of, but that's basically the space of the 4 options we have. I would love to open up the floor now to any questions or any comments about how you think we should proceed. Ian. Yes, Giovanni, absolutely. You can refer to the slides. You do not need to transcribe anything on these slides.
No, slide numbers.
As a implementer or potential implementer, as well as a QUIC enthusiast, I hate 4. There's a variation on 4 that I hate less, which is, I mean, you can say the final group that you sent the final, like the maximum group ID, and that's available at the MOQ layer, and that's like less terrible. I'm not saying that's a good idea. Like I don't really love number 4 anyway. I actually kind of hate it, but I'm just gonna.
Max group ID doesn't work because you have all these subgroups which may or may not have been delivered, and you have no idea what ordering those things are going to write. And even if you have the highest group, like there could be a latent subgroup from the previous group that's still out there. Like just the way this stuff works, it's not sufficient.
I think 2 is fine. I don't. Yeah. I'm a little bit hesitant to require reset streamnet because it's still newish. I'm not saying we couldn't do it if it was critical, but like also counting streams is icky. Like, I don't know. I feel like bad about it. I don't know why I feel bad about it, but like, it's like something I've never seen done in any other like application layer thing. So like, it feels bad. But that's like completely aesthetic and I don't know why. Yeah, that's all I can say. Okay, thanks.
I hear that aesthetic feeling. Victor?
I think counting things is not just aesthetically icky. It is really, if you accidentally miscount things, you are bound to end up in a very bad position. I feel like 2 is among the direction where I want us to see, except I'm not entirely sure relying on fins from QUIC layer is correct. My observation is that in order to solve this problem, we need to add something on MOQ layer. Because what we really want to get is we want somehow, so we want to send subscribe down to tell the peer that it can tear down all of the state, but we really want to know if the peer has received everything we've sent so far. So we should somehow get from the peer set confirmation that peer has actually received everything we expected to have. And I feel like our question should be, what is the least cumbersome mechanism to do that?
Giovanni, you don't even have to like record all the comments necessarily. They are going to be recorded, digitally.
Cool. Okay, but in general, if
Like,
someone says something, you would say their name, or does it matter?
I mean, I would generally attach a name to things for sure. So like, if you think something is particularly notable and you want to say Victor said this, you should say Victor and not like somebody said.
Gotcha.
Thank you. So to respond to you, Victor, like I mean, because I can see your code, I know where you're going with this. Would you be satisfied with something like 609 and then maybe following up a more complicated, or if there's a new like ACK mechanism, application level ACK mechanism later, like, would you be fine with that as this is an intermediate step?
Well, it's intermediate step. I mean, like my problem, like, is it has the well-known correctness issue where receiving fin acknowledgement from the peer does not mean the data has been processed. So it's a very famous thing in QUIC, and typically we only use the thing once, and I only used to what's this called, to
So
like congestion control things. So no.
Isn't this solvable in a receiver implementation by just making sure you clear all your in-order receive buffers before you destroy subscription state?
I think the general answer is this is not really solvable, because to acknowledge things on application layer, you need application level acknowledgement and not QUIC level acknowledgement.
Okay, so given that, like, would you?
Don't get me wrong, this is like will work 99.9% of the time in practice. It's just like there is a very weird trace condition.
Okay, so so I'm sorry, Mo. I know you're waiting patiently, and Alan, Victor. What would you recommend right now? I mean, what's one of these options satisfy you, or do you want to like just punt this until option 5 is ready?
I think option 1 is satisfactory, and option 5 could be something that speeds up 1 in worst case.
Okay. Thank you. Mo.
I agree with option 1. I don't like option 2 because I think it's unnecessary machinery, and you think you're eliminating a timer, but you're not. You're pushing the timer to the publisher. The publisher is not going to sit around forever waiting for these, FinACs to come back. So the publisher is going to now have timers to tear down its state. So I don't think that's a good solution. I don't think you're avoiding the timer in any of these cases. You're talking about cleaning up resources. Nothing is going to deterministically force the other side to clean up its own resources. It's going to clean up its own resources one way or the other. So I don't see any way that you're getting around having a timer to do that. And I think 1 is the simplest solution.
Hey, Alan.
So so as an individual, I think I agree with Mo that there's no way you get out of having a timer, because there's no okay, maybe in 2 you don't, the receiver, you always need a timer, right? Because the other guy could lie to you or not send you something. And so you always need to protect yourself against that case. So what if you send all your FinACs, but you never get a subscribe done? What does that mean? You have to have a timer for that. And similarly with 3, I tell you, I made a bazillion streams for the subscription and I sent you 0. Please wait until you see a bazillion streams. Also not going to happen. So there always will be a timer. So I think in some ways what we're talking about here is like the best shortcut to a timer. And I wanted a shortcut, and I wrote 3. I like 3 the best of the shortcut options, because the publisher does not have to keep any state around. It knows what it's done. It knows that it's done, and it can immediately destroy the state as soon as it reaches that. And the publisher is likely to be in relays or like where there's lots of state, and there's a premium on getting rid of it quickly. So I like it not having to wait around for acts from all these subscribers before it can like tear things down. So like, and that's one property of 3. I also, like, to Victor's point, like, oh, the problem with counting is you could count wrong. I mean, I don't buy this as a reason not to do something. See also flow control. We have it every layer, which has the exact same problem. And I will say people do get it wrong. And then they find those bugs and they fix those bugs. But like, yeah, you do have to know how to count. That is a downside. I don't know what necessarily to make of the reset stream at requirement and how onerous it is to QUIC implementations, but like my personal view, like reading the tea leaves, is that like in some ways this was like a feature that QUIC missed in V1, and the universe is coalescing around actually this is a pretty useful feature, and it'll just eventually work its way everywhere. And so I don't know that we need to worry so much about what is the current supported state today. So anyway.
All right. Anyone else have a comment? Maybe we should just do a show of hands. Magnus, do you want to run this, or do you want me to do it?
I'm fine with you running it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to use the Google Meet show your hands features. I don't actually have to type a question. So I'm hearing like nobody likes 4. A bunch of people have spoken in favor of 1, and we've had some like feeling for 2, and Alan has come around on as like proposed 3. So let's just see what the silent majority are saying. So okay, Giovanni, this is the kind of thing I would like you to write down as results of the show of hands. So if you think the best solution is okay, well let me restate this. Let me start with something else. Yeah, okay. If you think the best solution is number 1, raise your hand in Google Meet.
We can only vote once, right? Only one solution.
Yes. Okay, 8 people just want to run a timer. All right, 9. What? No, 8. Wait, people are giving up. Don't put your hands down yet. We're gonna wait for this to stabilize. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, 9 are in favor of number 1 of the. How many people do we have here? A bunch. 16 maybe. All right, that's probably going to do it. But who is in favor of number 2? Giovanni, is your hand still up? Right? Okay.
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you. All right, going once for number 2. Going once for number 2, or going twice for number 2. All right, number 2 is dead. Who's in favor of number 3? Going once, going twice. Okay, 2 votes for number 3. Raise your hand if either you want number 4 or you really want none of these and want to see a different proposal entirely. I'm just going to group them together because I don't think anyone's going to vote for number 4.
I will say that I voted for number 1, but if you come up with an so my observations are: 1, there is nothing in number 2 that requires change in the spec as far as I understand it. And 2, and my second observation is, if you come up with something better, you can write it down and propose. I don't want us to like close this with prejudice for number 1.
Okay, so Victor, are you proposing like a combination of 2 and 1, which is like 2 is the signal when you send subscribe done, but then the receiver is still running a timer?
I mean, my understanding, from what I understand, subscribe done currently tells you to tear down the state. And the problem is like we need to have a timer in order to, well, no, it's the signals that the state has been turned down. And the problem we're trying to fix this is how to tear it down without relying on a timer. And your observation with number 2 is using fence is a good signal for doing that. But what I see here is optimization, because at the end of the day, you always have a timer. 2 sounds like a viable optimization strategy.
So it's like 2. All right. I mean, there's details here about. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Giovanni. So to close the last question I made, which is number 4 or something else, I'm going to call this 0 hands. But I think we're having a good discussion right now.
Yeah, let's take discussion and come back to that point you tried to make, because we got hands during the call, which I think has to do with. So I think we want to hear Alan here what he has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to respond to Victor's point, so one thing that I'm not like being super clear in this presentation is like, what is the actual threshold for the sender to send subscribe done? I mean, the slide I had, this other slide, the slide I had with all the boxes and the lines and stuff, suggests that after you send everything, you send subscribe done. Once you've delivered all the data to the streams and you've decided you're not going to reset anything else, you could, in theory, destroy your subscription state. 2 like delays it a little bit. Reliably delivered streams. Well, the practical difference is pretty small here, but like in general, like, yes, I would suggest that number 2 is a good rule for when the server sends subscribe done, when the sender sends subscribe done. The real question is, what can the receiver do with that in terms of destroying its own state? And I think people are saying, well, we're going to have to run a timer anyway, so just run a timer. Now, like, could we have it destroy it earlier if it's kind of doing good accounting about stuff that's in buffer? Probably. But let's let Alan talk.
Okay, so I mean, I think no matter what, the subscriber has a timer running. Either you're waiting for streams that come in after subscribe done, or you're waiting for subscribe done, of some kind. But like,
yes,
that is always there. I don't like 2 because it requires first of all, it doesn't do anything unless you also tell the receiver that it can do something immediately on receiving subscribe done. So if we're not saying that, I don't think it does anything other than push problems to the publisher where I don't want them, right? I want the publisher to just be like, okay, the upstream of this subscription is gone and I will publish no more, subscribe done, and I'm throwing away all my state and you'll get what you get. Now, so like,
I think number 2 does give guidance to the receiver. So if I receive a subscribe done, that means if you drain all the in order stuff that's sitting in your receive buffers right now, then you can, once you've done that, you can destroy all of your state.
Okay, I agree, but only if there's a must that says you must not send a subscribe done until you've gotten all the FinAcs.
Right, which is what this says.
Right, but I think what I heard, what Victor was saying a second ago was like, oh, we do a timer and then we make a recommendation about when you send subscribe down. And I'm like, that does not do anything. And so that's what I was trying to argue against. The reason also, like, I think the common case is that you do have everything, and forcing first of all, we haven't even talked about how long the sort of minimum amount of time we think, or maybe there's no minimum. Maybe it's just a recommendation and we don't care. Implementations do what implementations do, but now every receiver, I think every receiver, no matter what we do, has to wait around after subscribe done, even in the very common case they have everything. And so this is another like global warming problem. Like we should like have a shortcut here for the common case, and I think it's 3. But anyway, that's what I wanted to add.
I would encourage people not. I mean, in my opinion, like like early timer expiration is not like such a big deal. Like if you choose not to do a timer, like you're just not going to get objects, right? Like if like late streams arrive and you just don't get them, like maybe that's a problem for you, maybe it isn't. If you set a timer for like 10 minutes, like are late arriving objects that arrive 10 minutes later, are those really any good to you? Or have you long ago like just closed your viewer, right? So I do think we can leave a lot of like receiver discretion on like if you want to run a timer, how long you want it to run. I mean, that's like I said, this is a bike shed we can have, but I think like it's not like the protocol crashes if you set your timer too low. Ian.
Okay. I think 1 is fine. Like I'm thinking through this. And one reason it's fine, and I don't think it's really a big deal, is if you do unsubscribe, presumably you don't really care what you get. You're just like, maybe you're nuking your own state at that moment, and you don't even really care about subscribed. I'm not sure. If you're waiting for content and you want to play it, you're going to wait for as long as it makes sense for the player to wait for the content you want to play. Like, I mean, if you're trying to finish the end of the GOP, like you're going to hopefully try to like wait until, you run out of buffer. And then, if there's a rebuffering event and you have like the next GOP, the next like iframe, then you're going to be like, okay, whatever, I'll just start playing the next iframe because apparently I'm not getting any more of like this GOP. And it seems like a self-solving problem in a lot of cases. And so that's why I think the timer is fine. I mean, and in terms of how to set it, like, sure, set it to like what the min of the delivery timeout and like 3 times the PTO or some, 3 MSL, whatever you want to call it. But that's me.
Alan?
Yeah, so the comment I want to make here is if we have only a timer, there's never a way to know you got everything, which I think is a problem given that for MOQT, like the default mode of operation is high fidelity. And so now there's like if my goal was to get everything, there's no way I'll know if I got it. Like there's no signal at all. It's just like, okay, well, the publisher stopped publishing and you hang on as long as you care. But like there'll never be with absolute certainty, like I got everything there was to get. And I think that's a problem. Like I think there needs to be some way to know I got everything.
Okay.
unless there's overwhelming hands for timer only. So unless these impassioned arguments for timer only is insufficient, I think we have our direction in short term.
Well, I think, all right, I'm going to propose as someone who's maybe overthought this whole thing, I'm going to propose a sort of merger of 1 and 2, which is that number 2 is the condition to send subscribe done. And then as a receiver, you can kind of do what you want. And actually, I'm looking back at 609. I think it kind of says this in some ways, that as a receiver, look, if you just you can set a timer to collect, all right, it needs to be written a little bit because of this reading buffer issue, but ultimately, as a receiver, you get subscribe done. You know that the subscriber has sent everything it's going to send. You've received, at least in your quick receive buffer, you received all the reliable data that there is, that's in-time data that there is. And there might be some stuff out there that's being reset, right? That you might want for posterity or not. Now you can choose to set a timer to receive all that stuff. You could set a timer because you don't have a good means of pulling stuff out of your receive buffers, etc. And you can set it for whatever time you want. A recommended thing would be at least delivery timeout, unless that's infinite, of course. I think that's maybe the way we should proceed. I'm very sympathetic to Alan's argument. So the reason not to do that is Alan's argument that delaying subscribe done that late causes the publisher to keep state for another RTT. But that seems to be where, the other alternative is to have subscribe done sent as soon as I've just shoved everything into the queues. Everything has either been, I've sent a fin on everything or sent a reset on everything. Now that would eliminate my ability to later reset a stream that is taking too long, but that's another thing. Mo.
Didn't we have an object status tell us when the groups end?
Well, first of all, it's optional. The other problem is even if I have a group end, even if all the objects are delivered, some sort of objects is delivered from 0 to the end, that logically works as a signal. But the problem is, once again, I'm back in the scoreboard keeping as a receiver. I have to keep track of every object ID I've received in really all groups and make sure that they're all there. If there are any gaps, then I have to, and that's that was the problem with the original subscribe done implementation, the issue that started this all. And I would submit that is too hard to implement as a receiver.
Wait a minute, I'm totally lost. A receiver, the receiver cares about the objects it receives, right? So obviously it is keeping a scoreboard of what it has a jitter buffer or something like that. It knows exactly what it got and what it didn't get. It has to have that scoreboard, jitter buffer.
Well, I don't know, in our implementation, MOQT immediately passes objects up to the application and then forgets about them. There's no MOQT level tracking of all the object IDs I've ever received.
That's a strange boundary to make, the application versus the MOQ transport, to say that it doesn't know or care anything about the objects themselves or their order or their.
Well, as a relay, if I'm not a caching relay, right? Let's talk about relays. Do I really want to keep track of all the object IDs I've ever delivered for that subscription, or do I just want to just forget about it and keep moving?
Well, a caching relay, of course, you're caching.
A non-caching relay.
A non-caching relay. A transport-only relay. Yeah, would you still need to know whether or not to forward something that comes in?
All I need to know is the right edge of the. If an object arrives for the first time, I'm going to forward it, right?
Okay, so you just don't have to dedupe. Just if you got dupes, you send dupes.
Alan?
Yeah, I really like 2 as a requirement on publishers. I really think it's a bad idea, right? It means that my fan out case, which is a common case we're trying to design for, I've got one publisher and a bazillion subscribers. And now I'm tracking acts for every single one, every stream of every subscriber I'm sending everywhere, and they're all getting subscribed done at different times. And one guy goes into an elevator and I'm stuck holding, or is malicious, and I'm stuck holding it for my maximum amount of time, basically every time. Like, it seems like a huge waste. Like, publisher knows when it's done, it should send it immediately. And like, I mean, either we like, but like levying this requirement on publishers, I think is a very bad idea.
Okay. So you would argue that the second, I mean, don't I have to, so what you're suggesting is once I shove something into the stream, I can just, if I've sent all my fins, I can subscribe done. But like when I want to reset that stream potentially once the delivery timeouts have been exceeded.
I mean, I think this is why, like, it's been all as an individual here. This is why I don't think 2 is the right way to go here. Like, I think 3 is, because it gives you a way to know exactly that you got everything.
Yeah.
And like the publisher's state is cleared immediately. Like, I've written everything to the transport. I've like done a checkpoint after track alias, so I know at least the track alias will get there. I send subscribe done, and then the receiver knows as soon as it's seen that many streams, it's shortcut. It doesn't have to run a timer, doesn't have to wait. It can know that it got everything. Like, it's just the perfect package, people. And I don't know how to, I can't sell it anymore. I could throw in a free basket of fries or something. Anyway.
Okay. Has anyone been moved by Alan's appeals? Feel free to speak up or raise your hand or something. I'm actually very sympathetic to his appeal. Like, he convinced me, but Mo.
I agree with Alan about don't ever do 2. Don't force machinery on the publisher, because those are the high volume senders. I don't see a problem with the optimization in 3, but I don't know about requiring it, because I still see enough corner cases that it's not deterministic enough. Like, you know, like I said earlier, my naive view was, well, you have a status in the object itself that tells you if it's the last one, if it's the end of the track, and you know, barring holes, you know, why wouldn't you just say, okay, that's the highest object ID, group ID, subgroup ID I'm ever going to see, so that's it. I you know, if all I have, everything else is lower, I'm done.
I think this is partially falls out from the lack of formal requirements in the object and group ID space, right? I mean, and even then you'd need a scoreboard, but it's like, if you're guaranteed that it was compact, then you could know, okay, I did get everything because I have every single object from 1 to Z. Like,
so to answer Giovanni's question, so the difference between 1 and 3 is with 3, you actually don't need to run a ton. Well, so what happens is the second you know how many streams you're going to open for a subscription, you can send subscribe done. And then the receiver can just like count streams as they arrive, whether the reset streams or fins or whatever. And once everything has been closed, once it's received a total of, n stream closes, it can tear it down its state. Like I feel like Alan, I mean, I'm not sure I get. Okay, so number 3 is a good solution. I think that covers all the logical problems. I don't think but like there's definitely group interest in 1, and in terms of the threshold for saying subscribe done, I'm not sure his distinction makes a difference. Like, if I fin a bunch of streams and they haven't been act, I have to keep subscribe state because there's still a delivery timeout out there, and I might reset those streams. If somebody goes in the elevator, the whole session is going to go down. Like, subscribe state is neither here nor there. Potentially, I mean, if there's an infinite delivery timeout, that's an interesting corner case, and there's probably a timer going on where eventually you're going to give up on things like that if someone just refuses to act me. That's like a DDoS thing. But ultimately, I have to keep subscribe state until either I've chosen to reset a stream or all the fins have been act. And if a fin is not act for a long time, I'm going to reset the stream, which also closes, which allows me to send subscribe done. So if you buy the whole number 3 thing together, then that works. But if you're not going to have the stream counting business, like, you kind of have to have number 2 as the threshold for subscribe done.
So the time check here. I think
Yeah.
we're so let's hear Ian. Otherwise, I would be in this look like okay. We have a fairly strong indication towards one. I think updating, rewriting a PR for that is the right direction for now, and then people have a chance to actually think slightly more about to see if they have more input on it. But otherwise, going with one which is based on what input so far have been.
Right.
But
So,
Ian,
before, go ahead, Ian, and then I'll wrap this up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's enough support for one. I think one is largely fine despite Alan's concerns, which I think they're valid, but I'm not really sure in practice they matter, to be completely honest. But I guess we'll find that out over time. I think we need to do something because we have a bunch of issues about how subscribe done is like completely ill-defined today, and it really is like kind of a black hole of issues. And so I would rather do something that's fine with the caveat that, like, as Victor said, this is one of those issues where we are closing the issues, but we observe that is reasonably likely we might revisit some details of the solution in the future, and that is okay.
Yeah.
Like we are not declaring this consensus for all time. We are saying we think this is good enough for now, and we will revisit it once basically someone has a better idea.
Alan.
I guess before we, was anyone else convinced? Maybe do we need another quick show of hands to see if anybody wants to switch their vote, or are we other? If not, I mean, I'll defer to Magnus too if you think if we should just go forward with one. But I agree we should do something. Leaving the status quo because we couldn't come to like the perfect thing in this 45 minutes is a bad idea. So like, yes, move forward. And we can leave another issue open saying there's no way to shortcut this time or whatever we believe the new issue is. But at least it's not like subscribe done. It's a horrible mess that nobody can implement.
Mo?
For the notes, I think Alan's point was the highest bit for me that that we need to make sure we understand deterministic delivery. Because if we don't have that, I think we are, pretty limited. So let's make sure that we understand, can we find a path to deterministic delivery? If we need another mechanism to help do that, I'm all for it. But I don't think it's just the subscribe done. Like Alan said, it's more about the overall, ball that's a lot of tangled things, the object status, the sparseness or compactness of the ID spaces, all that kind of stuff, needs to be factored in before we close the book on deterministic delivery.
Okay, that's a huge ball of wax. I'm not going to tackle it. All right, so this is what I'm going to. So people want to do sender. So I think 609 is actually a good basis from which to proceed. There is I will use 609 for the rules about when a sender can send subscribe done. I understand Alan's concern, but like I think if you don't do the stream counting, like you cannot close your subscription earlier than that.
Hold on, I'm really not sure that's captured. Like me, and I'm going to ask Magnus here. Like,
no, I agree, Martin. I don't think that there's consensus on that rules are two. I think that's a very open issue. Question.
So two has okay. Well, all right. Well, like if you let me finish. So like as in terms of the receive side behavior, I'm gonna rewrite what 609 says to involve a timer and saying receiver's gonna do what a receiver's gonna do. But like I mean, what other rule is there on when you send subscribe done?
I think
it does not involve stream accounting, which there's no support for.
I think you can send it anytime after you've sent all the fins or resets, or basically after you've sent all the stuff you're going to send. Anytime after that,
don't I have to retain the ability to reset those streams that I've sent fin for?
Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think it depends on context. I mean, at least that's the read of the room I'm seeing at the moment. I think just leave it vague and do, you can say may wait until, the notification of the fin. I think that's fine. But it's perfectly reasonable to call out the things you could do to make this signal more reliable, but I don't think there's consensus of requiring it whatsoever. That's my read. I don't know. Maybe I'm...
Okay. We'll just let people kill their subscription state with stream still open. That's fine, I guess. It seems a little... All right, whatever. I'll write that. if you're interested in this subject, look at the PR. I'm still going to use 609 as a basis.
I mean, the original version of 609 was a timer, so I think it's
Yeah.
fine to keep it. I think it's fine to start from 609.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to have some guidance in the PR about when you send subscribe done. My objection was, or that Magnus identified, there may not be consensus now, is that like, what is it required to delay until a certain time? I think that's where there's not. We can say like, if the publisher knows they want it to be reliably delivered, they should wait until this time, like, or something like that.
I mean, we could put some caveats in around delivery timeout. If there's a delivery timeout that's like moderate, then I mean, I think it's probably reasonable to say if you're going to bother like actually enforcing the delivery timeout correctly on these streams, ideally you should wait until you've kind of enforced the delivery timeout to send subscribe done. But like, I'm not sure how much, that's mostly just because like you have stayed around for the subscription until you like, if the idea is when the publisher sends subscribe done, it's nuking all its state, but it still has streams with a pending delivery timeout. That's a little weird to me, but that's a personal opinion.
That's the point I've been trying to make. You did it much better, but Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different layers of state here, right? So there's MQTT subscription state, which can be torn down, which is independent from, I have a QUIC session here and I've sent some data on it and I'm tracking acts, like there's state at different levels. And so like there is still some state that can be discarded that I think is useful to discard as early as possible.
I'm specifically talking about delivery timeout, which is absolutely subscription level state.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may, by the time you send subscribe done, that's been potentially transferred to QUIC level state, which is like, hey, if this thing doesn't get out by this time, like reset the stream. Like anyway, maybe it's important.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. I think we basically chewed up the whole hour on this.
With apologies to extension enthusiasts.
Yeah. Okay. I'll write something on. I'll take 609 and modify. I'll send an email to the list when I've done my best on it. Okay. So can we get anything useful done with the object stuff? I mean the extension stuff in 7 minutes.
I suspect not, but I'm not sure. Is there a high level question that we'd like to discuss so we can prime people, Will?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues. I would really love to devote, like, can we pick a date and discuss extensions as the primary topic?
Our next interim, we could talk about it.
Yep.
That would be great.
I prefer that. Okay. I want to call out that Alan, thank you very much, wrote a ton of PRs. I don't know if you had 4 lattes on Friday afternoon or something, but it was all at once. They're mostly quite sensible. They allow us to close a number of longstanding issues that I think are not overly contentious in most cases. And so please, if you have time, review them. I would prefer not to merge a PR just because I think it's fine and Alan wrote it. I would prefer to have at least 1 or 2 other reviewers for understandable reasons. And some of them are editorial or editorial-ish, and some of them are normative. But yeah, so please if you have the time, please use that time to take a look if you're interested in any of these topics. And even if you feel you are not an expert in one of these topics, but you feel qualified to read the text and say this looks fine, please just read it and hit approve. That's okay. You don't have to be as long as you're read it and you're sure, I would implement this. This seems fine. That's the bar. The bar is not that you feel like you're the subject matter expert on Go Away, in my opinion. So I would rather have more viewers who are just this is fine and have that signal, because right now sometimes the PRs I think are fine, and maybe people do take a look at them and they say, oh, this looks fine, but they don't actually hit the this looks fine button. So I don't know.
The secret to get me to write PRs is that Martin and Magnus assigned me to upload the minutes from IETF, and I don't want to do it.
Noted. Guess we get to do that from now on.
Procrastination is is very real. Yes.
Okay, so if you arrived late, please go sign the blue sheets. There's a link in the Google Meet chat on how to go do that. So add your name to the little affiliation to the list of people that were here today. Thank you, Ian, for those comments about PRs. Thanks, Alan, for writing the PRs. Thanks for all your feedback on this. I've done thing. I think we achieved the important thing, which we all agree it's a problem. And like I said, I'm pretty content to write down whatever solution, even if it's not perfect. All right, very good. So I guess we'll give you all 5 minutes back, and I'll see you in 2 weeks where we will talk about. Yes. Also, if you said something of consequence, please do look at the. Thank you, Giovanni, for agreeing to take notes as a new person at that. As we have a person who's taking notes the first time, it's good to take a look at what he wrote and make sure that it is, well formed in IETF terms. And thanks again for volunteering, Giovanni. Okay, so with that said, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. 2 weeks from now, we'll talk about object extensions. That was number 1 on the list, unless something unless a massive fire erupts between now and then.
Do we have a date for the next interim?
All the interims are scheduled through Bangkok. They're on the data tracker website.
Right. Okay, then because there's nothing currently scheduled beyond today, that means we don't have a date.
What?
Yeah, I didn't see anything scheduled beyond today.
Do we
either.
need AD approval or something?
No. All right. Hold up. If that's.
I mean, I've seen emails going out to the list for all of these. So,
I just looked before joining this call. That's why I was late. I missed it completely. So I went to see and I saw for today.
they went out, I think, Monday.
Wait a minute. Okay, if you go to the working group tab, meetings, working group data tracker. Let me just put it in the chat. No, shoot. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to share it in the chat because Google Meet is not being helpful here.
The link. So.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you go to future meetings, they're all listed there. I mean, unless this is like a chair view that no one else can see. I don't think so.
I can see
No,
it.
that's excellent. I stand corrected. Thank you.
Okay.
There.
Yeah. So everything is scheduled through the Denver hybrid, and we will not have an interim between that and Bangkok because there's not enough time. So yes. So the whole interval is scheduled. All right. I don't think there's anything else. We're going to chew up 3 of your returned 5 minutes, and see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.